Good evening, everyone, and those of you who are listening live stream, we welcome you and are glad that you are participating with us. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I need a motion to approve the minutes of the agenda. Okay, Mr. Evan Guthrie has made the motion. I need a second. Ms. Crosby, any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, it is unanimous. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn the time over to Mr. Evan Guthrie.
All right. If you like to bow your heads now. Dear Lord, we ask that you give this board the wisdom, strength, courage, and knowledge to do what's truly in the best interest of the 26,000 plus students in this district. And we ask for continued blessings and safety for the entire DD2 family. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the July 13th regular board meeting. Okay, Mr. Farnsworth made the motion. Ms. Tupper second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. It is unanimous. Before I go to the state of the district, I just want to read this little piece to you. Before we hear, let me put my glasses on so I read it right. Before we hear the much anticipated presentation from Mr. Pye regarding the reopening of schools, the board would like you all to know that public comments are very important to us. In order to allow your comments to be meaningful and targeted, we have elected to move public comments on agenda items until the conclusion of Mr. Pye's presentation. At that time, public comments on agenda items will be heard prior to any vote being taken by the board. Additionally, board policy BEDH limits all comments to 3 minutes per speaker for a total of 20 minutes of public comments. So with that, I would like to now turn the time over to our superintendent, Mr. Pye.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. It's been a week, a fast week, and of course, last Monday, we gave a presentation, an overview, an update of where we were. And it was an 8-page slide from a 57-page document. We've probably added 4 or 5 more pages to that document as we continue to do research. And I was on the phone with 9 other school districts this morning, and we seem to be slightly ahead of them. We were behind them a week or 2 ago, and I'm not used to being behind them, so we had to get back in first place. But there's a difference there. You don't want to rush too soon, because I like to sometimes let them test the waters so that we know how to present our case to guarantee what we want. But since last week, when we gave you an idea of some of the proposals we were looking at and how we plan to open our schools back up, the different options that we were faced with, and it was very general. We told you it was general, even though we received a lot of emails asking, what about this and what about that? It wasn't intended to be that. Tonight is the plan. So, and I anticipate the plan to be thorough enough that it'll probably reduce a significant number of the questions, because we had a lot of questions that we built into this presentation, hopefully, and we've adjusted that for the public. Last week we went on the instructional models, and we talked to you about a need to adjust the bell schedule slightly at the 3 levels, and then we talked about a change in the calendar. Tonight we will not be talking about the actual everything on the calendar, just the start date. We will be back to you probably at the next meeting, or the meeting after, way before school starts, to be able to let the public know if it changes any of our important dates on the calendar that they have. And right now we're not seeing a whole lot of it. If we go with a September 8th opening, it appears that we will be out no later than June 17th, and that sounds late, possibly a week before then. So it's probably like the 10th, which really isn't bad. I know many years in my long history, that's when we got out, especially when we were going after Labor Day. Tonight, we want to give you more information on these plans as we submitted our plan to the State Department. The deadline was Friday. One day after the governor made his announcements of what he expected, it was totally different of what we had been told up to that point by the medical field and the agencies, health agencies, and also our State Department of Education. It was just about as opposite as it could get, and it threw us for a loop because our plans were pretty out there. And even though we made them flexible, we just, the rhetoric of that was very compelling because we want to be team players. We want to follow people, lead. We like to do the right things. But I mean, we have a conscience too, and we've listened to our public, particularly our teachers have been very vocal on this in a very positive, please understand, a very positive way. And I've been very touched by that. We will be presenting our proposal for your consideration, and then I'm going to ask you to at least vote on the bell schedule and proposed school start date. So those will be the things we'll be asking about. But looking there, who's got the slide? Yeah, I'm ready. Well, there's a message for me. That's in our plan. This will all be on the web in the morning. So everybody will have it, and parents who miss this or hear about it, or they're not sure what they heard tonight, go back and look at this and study it very closely. Then define your questions, pinpoint them, and get with us at the district, and I think we can answer just about any of them. There are a few things we're waiting to see how acceptable our plan is. I'm going to tell you right now, we submitted to the State Department the very plan that we gave you last time. I didn't change a thing. So we have that plan in Columbia. Again, we're talking to people at the State Department of Education. We anticipate we are going to be okay, but again, you never know. So this whole report is very flexible to move anywhere we need to do and still look out for the safety of our students and our staff. But certainly the proposal that we are submitting tonight does about as good a job as that as we're capable of doing. But we talked last time, and here they are, the learning options that we have that would be school-based instruction, depending on the health conditions that we're facing at the time, and also the beginning of our new virtual academy. And a lot of questions about that. I just want to throw out one quick thing. When we said we're in partnership, we are running the virtual academy. It's Dorchester 2s. We don't own platforms. We don't have 150 lesson plans for the whole year, content for all the subjects. We don't have that for regular traditional teaching, let alone online. So we have to use theirs as part of their service. We're part of that network. We've been using Apex at the middle and the high school for years, very effectively. Now, Admentum does a good job with the elementary piece that we've not had. Again, our teachers will preview any and everything on there. Our teachers will make the final decision of what goes home to the students online. So we're still in charge. Taught by Dorchester 2 teachers. Now, there could be a course at the high school and middle school or whatever that we have to use one of their teachers because it's a strange area that maybe we can't find a teacher in that certification area, and so we will utilize the teacher that they have, but that's going to be rare. We prefer to use our people. And I hope when they get up there, they'll verify that that's true and I didn't make that up. Then we're going to approve the adjusted bell schedule and adjusted calendar start. All right, this was the chart we submitted to you, and this is what we gave the State Department Friday, or Thursday. I guess we sent out late Thursday afternoon after the governor had just dropped his bomb early in the day. So that was a quick turnaround for us. But we were unanimous. Our principals were unanimous to send that proposal in, as was most of the teachers we heard from. I would say 90% preferred us to continue doing that. We did have some parents that were probably 50-50, and you can understand that. Those who knew what we were submitting, had studied it, felt it was as good as we could possibly do. But like I said, it's flexible. So no matter what they say we have to do to make our plan work, we've left places open that we have not given a final decision till we hear from them. Then we'll make a decision, because we do not wish to go back on anything. I hate to tell teachers you will come to work every day and then turn around and say, no, you're not coming, and then say you are coming. The other way around, everybody would be happy. But we'll err on the side of safety first to see what our leaders in Columbia will allow us to do. And we're not the only district. Over a third of the districts to almost a half are using our model. So we feel real good about that. Our model is similar to ours. Our ultimate goal is to be able to eventually return to face-to-face. That is our goal. There's nothing like it. Research will tell you children learn best from their teacher, not a computer. But folks, face-to-face is not possible now. So we really have to look at other options. The district has spent somewhere between $16 and $17 million on technology. Every student will have their own computer. Why would we have things like this and not use it? What we've heard from Ms. Spearman, what we've certainly heard from the governor and the legislative folks, and our community, and our own teachers and staff, we cannot duplicate anything we did last spring. That was out of urgency, with no direction. It was the blind leading the blind. We did the best we could do with what we had. And I stand by that because our teachers and principals worked hard to make that work. But just at the end of the day, the ring didn't fit the finger. Simple as that. We think our model here does. And I think we will find that as we grow and return back to somewhat normalcy, we will be ready to do it in a real professional manner. We are basing our model on the DHEC metrics as much as we can. But you know, that's changing with what they're allowed to tell us, what people believe they can and cannot do. But I know one of the board members shared with me is before we started tonight that they've talked to two medical folks that work in the medical field who are very concerned about children being ready to come back at this time. And that's what I'm hearing most places I go. Now, everybody wants them back until you got thinking about it, and their precious loved one, children, they do not want to put in that jeopardy. No parent wants that. So with that in mind, we're going to move on with our planning for a hybrid or an e-learning option. The e-learning option is the high risk, which we are at now. Hopefully by September the 9th, or 8th, I guess it is, we hope to be back to medium risk, which would allow us then to go right into the hybrid model, which I think would be right in the middle and be a great place to start and get kids acclimated back. But either or, we're prepared to do the other. The governor's model was not to use the e-learning at all. Ms. Spearman would love us to do face-to-face, which the middle one has, but on the end, there'll be some of that with select students that we may have to deal with in a different type way. But look at the models that we have here. We have the face-to-face, the hybrid, and the e-learning one. I believe this is Ms. E-Step now. We skipped the slide, or at least I have a different slide in mind. So I won't go over that slide. We'll move on. That's okay. Ms. E-Step, you see the parent choice there in the second one. Go back to the second one. There you go. The school-based instruction, the three models, face-to-face, the hybrid, the e-learning. And then there's the virtual academy. So parents get to choose, do they want their children to receive school-based instruction, or do they want them in the virtual academy? Now, each of those models on the left have different portions of all of that. So depending on which one, we end up getting the best response from. And then the online learning is 100% for the virtual academy. Okay, with that said, Ms. E-Step.
Good evening, board members, Chairman Robinson, Mr. Pye. Dr. Harrison and Amanda Santa Maria are also going to be up here with me this evening because we're going to sort of tag team as we go through this, because there are different parts to it on the instruction side, on the health and safety side, so we've got a whole team that will be up here. Sorry. As Mr. Pye said, we've had the school models that we presented last week. Tonight, what we're going to do is give you a little bit more detail into those. We've worked very hard in our 6 committees, going through making sure that each one of those committees, the technology, the operations, the social emotional learning, teaching and learning, all of the areas were covered within the models. So very quickly, to go review this, we have 3 levels, a face-to-face instructional model, a hybrid instructional model, and an e-learning model. That is all going to be based on, as Mr. Pye said, the level of disease activity, which Ms. Santa Maria is going to talk about in just a minute. But what our district response will be is that we are providing options, varied options for all of our parents, for our families, for our students. So if we're face-to-face, that's what we are normally used to. That will be 5 days. Schools will be open, face-to-face instruction. We're not there right now. Hybrid is the next best thing between the two, where schools will be open. We'll still get to see students 2 days a week in the schools face-to-face, but the other 3 days will be e-learning. And as Mr. Pye said, that's not what we did in the spring. That was something totally different based on an emergency. Our teachers are ready and excited about what we have now to offer our students in the way of e-learning for those 3 days. And then, of course, if we are where we are right now, where we are at a high risk, that would be the students would be 5 days e-learning at home. But again, our teachers will be teaching virtually using the Microsoft Teams platform, making sure that they are face-to-face with students via the devices that they will also have, so that there is instruction going on daily. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to talk a little bit about the level of disease activity.
Good evening. So a lot of members of the community have been asking what kind of defines the 3 different levels of disease activity. And this information comes directly from DHEC, that's the Department of Health, and they release this data weekly, and it defines the level of disease activity in our county. So Dorchester County currently is at a high level of disease activity. They use certain metrics to determine what our level of disease activity is. We monitor this frequently. Again, they release a specific report weekly, and we will continue to monitor this. If you go to the next slide. We will continue to monitor this and determine by mid-August what instructional model we can choose. Again, ideally, we would like to be at a hybrid model. We would like to be at a moderate risk level, but right now we are at a high disease activity, so potentially e-learning.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. So since we are at a high risk, what would e-learning look like is where I would start my part of the presentation tonight. And just want to stress before I even start getting in it, as Mr. Pye has mentioned it, Ms. Estep has mentioned it, is that when we look at e-learning, and later when I talk about our virtual academy, what we did in the spring, this will look nothing like it. Like Ms. Estep said, our teachers have been preparing, our teachers are excited, we're ready to move into a digital world with our students and preparing them for the 21st century. So it will not look like anything we've seen in the spring. So what does it look like if we're at high risk and we have to go with that e-learning option? Well, if you look in the box at the bottom, students will utilize e-learning at home until the disease activity allows us to move into a hybrid or even into a face-to-face. Think of it like a sliding scale. As the disease goes down, we can slide into that hybrid, we can slide into that face-to-face. The health and safety precautions in the middle, Ms. Santa Maria is going to cover, but instructionally, how does it look on those e-learning days? You'll see that all students, Monday through Friday, with their teachers, will be at home working on their technology for their lessons. Teachers and school counselors and mental health counselors will be providing social, emotional support to students, even in this e-learning environment. Felt like that was important to note, as well as students who have IEP goals. Those IEP goals will be maintained throughout e-learning. Teachers will provide daily online live sessions for all students, like Ms. Estep said, using Microsoft Teams, following the students' regular schedule. So that's important. That's a big difference from what we saw in the spring, is that we have some structure where kids are going to follow that schedule that they typically would have if they were sitting face-to-face in a brick-and-mortar school. Daily attendance will also be taken, and staff may report to the building Monday through Friday as safety conditions allow. And we're, as Mr. Pye said, we have submitted our plan. We're waiting for feedback. We're waiting for our plan to be approved before we make a decision on exactly what does that look like for our teachers, whether they're coming into the building and how many days that they're coming into the building during our e-learning phase.
So as far as what the health and safety precautions would look like in an e-learning model, if we did have staff in our buildings, they would be required to wear a face covering. Visitors would as well. We would be working on frequent cleaning. Our custodial crews would be cleaning the buildings frequently. We have frequent hand washing protocols, increased hand sanitizing stations. We have new visitor procedures in place where they're allowed by appointment only. We would also be screening our visitors to make sure that they're symptom-free and able to come in the building, no fevers. We are capping our water fountains to make sure that there's no water fountains being used, avoiding group gatherings, so any staff that are working in buildings are not, having large meetings. We're going to offer virtual events for some of those, back-to-school activities that typically happen at this time of the year. The feeding program would continue for all students to make sure that any student who's on e-learning is still having access to meals. And then we have updated protocols for sick staff to make sure that any staff who is working has access to protocols in the event that they did have an illness.
Okay, so Dr. Harrison mentioned that the students would be on their regular schedule. So we sort of want to go through and provide you a sample e-learning schedule. So I'm going to start out with elementary, and you see that with e-learning with live sessions, it says 6 hours and 30 minutes. That's not 6 hours of 30 minutes where a student is sitting in front of a computer doing something. So I want to make that very clear. They will still have their 6.5 hours like they would have in face-to-face, but that's going to look very different. So you'll notice where I have reading, language arts, writing, math, science, social studies, and resource services. That time would total to 3 hours. So they may have a reading block with their teacher face-to-face where the teacher does sort of a mini lesson for 20 minutes. And that's the whole entire group. And then they break into their small groups, and one group stays online with her on Teams, and she does a small group with those 4 or 5 students. The other ones go off and do some independent practice. They're off, but then they come back on. Same thing with the math and with the writing. So much like what we do in school, face-to-face, only this would be through Microsoft Teams. Then fine arts, health, and wellness, they still would participate in their daily fine arts or PE class, again 40 minutes, and that teacher would lead them, or they would have recorded sessions. Actually, they would have recorded sessions if it was e-learning. My apologies. And then the rest of the time, the 2 hours and 50 minutes, that is where it would look a little bit different, and kids may have a different schedule. So for example, our thoughts are that they would log in the morning for their morning meeting. Teacher welcomes them. How was everybody's evening last night, or how was your weekend? Talk about what the day is going to look like, what their assignments are going to be, and then they start in. The rest of the time that is sort of their independent time would be for independent reading, enrichment activities, projects that they may be doing. Of course, the teachers will be taking brain breaks like they do in the regular classroom to give them a chance to, just a little bit of downtime. Lunch, they have to have lunch sometime during the 6.5 hours, and recess or play. So you notice that almost 3 of the hours of the 6.5 is not necessarily in front of a computer.
And if you look at middle school and high school, you'll see 6.5 hours as well. Students will follow at both the middle school and the high school level, follow their regular bell schedule. so that they're seeing each of their teachers on a daily basis. Again, like Ms. Estep said, we are not expecting that students will, even in middle and high school, sit there for 6.5 hours looking at the computer screen, doing something on the computer screen. Just thinking as a high school history teacher, a way that this may look if I were in the classroom for a high school is I may have an introduction similar to elementary. I think I should have been an elementary school teacher, but a very quick introduction to my lesson, how it's going to look, what the expectations were, and some big thing that's good for the entire class. Then I may release some of my students, work with some of my students who need some help and maybe didn't master the previous content, release some students to do some independent practice, and maybe pull my class back at the end altogether to just do a final check-in for the day. Again, lunch would be built in, as well as some brain breaks for our students as well. Some time for ILT to build in some of that social emotional learning piece. Also, that is very important. So that's what a typical day in the e-learning schedule for a middle school and a high school student will look like.
And I also want to point out that the e-learning would be for those 5 days if we were at a high risk, but they also would have e-learning on the hybrid for those 3 days that they are at home. So that could be a sample schedule for that as well. The next model that we're going to take a look at would be the hybrid model. This is the one that would come at a moderate or a medium risk, which, as Mr. Pye alluded to earlier, that's sort of where we're hoping. If not in our green or face-to-face, but in reality, we're hopeful that we'll at least get to the moderate risk to start. Should we go the day after Labor Day. So in a medium risk, again, it's 2 days per week. The students would come for 2 days in a row, either Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday, Thursday, and the other 3 days would be e-learning at home with sort of this, you notice the sample schedule that we gave. I'm going to let Amanda talk about the differences or the similarities in the health and safety procedures on the hybrid, and then I'll go into more of the instructional model of what it looks like either in the classroom or on the e-learning days when she finishes.
So some similarities here. Masks would still be used. Obviously, students would be back in buildings in this model, so we would require students to wear face masks as well. Because we do have students involved in this model, we are going to work on social distancing. So our classrooms and our bus capacities will have reduced capacity for seating to make sure that we are social distancing in those areas. Our visitor procedures will still be in place in this model, screenings upon entry as well as appointments. Same thing for our bottle filling stations and things of that nature. In this model, we are suggesting no use of playground equipment or lockers to avoid congregation in hallways, as well as limit possible exposure out on the playground equipment since it's difficult to clean and sanitize between each use. We would serve breakfast and lunch in the classroom, again, to avoid congregation in cafeterias and areas like that. But for the most part, cleaning, hand sanitizing, hand sanitizer stations, those things would all remain the same in this model, similar to the high-risk model of e-learning.
Okay, and also on this model, teachers would report to the school Monday through Friday. So what does the instructional model look like for hybrid? And this is a sort of a busy screen, so I'm going to have you focus on the schedule in the middle where you see cohort A and cohort B. So let's say that a student is in cohort A. They would come Monday face-to-face and be on campus. They would come Tuesday and would be face-to-face on campus. On Wednesday and Thursday, they would be doing independent e-learning at home. Again, think back to the e-learning sample schedule that I talked about just a few minutes ago. And then on Friday, it would be another e-learning day, but for the first couple of hours in the morning, because we are not doing face-to-face instruction on campus, the teachers would do for elementary, they would do math and English language arts with them in the morning, face-to-face. Then in the afternoon, they would have more independent e-learning. So they're really getting their two important core subjects, core content areas at the elementary level. They're getting that 3 days a week. Cohort B would just flip-flop, and again, that's so that we can have half of the students in the building on different days, because again, we're coming back hybrid, moderate risk. We're still wanting to make sure that we're social distancing. So if you look at the face-to-face 2 days right below the cohort A and cohort B, again, they would be able to do their differentiated grouping based on the student needs, again, social distancing, hands-on learning. We would limit the sharing of supplies such as devices, books, learning tools, those things. And the teachers and school counselors, as well as the mental health counselors, school psychologists, and administration would continue to provide that social and emotional support on a regular basis. You're going to see that all throughout the presentation because we feel like that's very important, not only if we're in school doing face-to-face, but even when we're on e-learning days. So if you go up to the top right on the e-learning days, you'll notice that exact same statement there, that again, those folks would be providing social and emotional support regularly. And they could be doing that on the e-learning days while the teachers are actually teaching class, and we may have the guidance counselors or school psychologists getting on teams with those students that are e-learning at home to provide some of those lessons on social and emotional support. We would use instructional software such as our Waterford, our Compass Pathblazer, Adminum, those sort of things that they could be doing e-learning on at home, as well as online tools and lessons that teachers could record so that they could follow, the students could follow along and watch them. Not while they are teaching, but ones that have been recorded before so that they could just access those. Continuation of the learning based on face-to-face instruction, so they've had 2 days with the teacher, and then she would provide assignments or assign assignments or projects for them to do as a follow-up. So it would be practice, not necessarily new learning that they have to learn on their own. They could also virtually collaborate with their classmates, and again, daily attendance will be taken both face-to-face as well as on the e-learning days. Again, on Fridays, teachers would provide those online live sessions, and we're going to talk a little bit about that when we go to the sample schedules. So here is an example. We just took the one cohort A student. So Monday and Tuesday, face-to-face on campus. Wednesday and Thursday, independent e-learning at home. And again, if you look at those minutes have been divided out so that you see they total to 6.5. Again, that's a sample schedule. Of course, the teacher would, they may start with writing or they may start with math. It doesn't necessarily have to go in that order. But you see the thought is that they would have 60 minutes of English language arts, 30 minutes of writing, 60 of math, 30 of either science or social studies, their 40-minute special area, and then again the 2 hours and 50 minutes for independent. And then Friday, they would again do their morning meeting, have reading, language arts, and math, and then the rest of the day would be independent, and then that would also provide teachers with time to plan lessons, do communication with their parents, collaborate with their colleagues, and so forth.
Okay, so the hybrid schedule for a typical middle school student, what we will see is on Monday, Tuesday, students, and this is following the same pattern that Ms. Eastep followed, cohort A. So a cohort A student on Monday and Tuesday would be face-to-face instruction on campus on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday and Thursday, students will be working e-learning at home, so virtually, basically for 45 minutes per class, and that would be at home independently with some assignments and recordings that teachers have created for their students. And then for a middle school student on Friday, we're looking at a shortened abbreviated day similar to the elementary for 30 minutes per class, so that each student is still checking in and having some interaction with their teacher in an abbreviated schedule, something similar to an activity schedule, so that students still had that interaction with their teacher. They can check in with their teacher on Friday, and then they have some time that they can work independently also on Friday. And for our teachers, they will have the opportunity for, same as elementary, they will have opportunities for professional development. They have time to plan virtual activities for the next week, and also to check in with students that may need assistance or additional help. For a high school student, and before I move to high school, so cohort A student is what you saw for the middle school there. A cohort B student would be flipped. So cohort B, Monday and Tuesday, you would be doing the independent e-learning at home, and Wednesday and Thursday, you'd be in class, in face-to-face with your teacher on campus. So moving over to a high school, a typical high school student, Monday and Tuesday, if you're in cohort A, similar and the same as middle school, you'll be face-to-face instruction on campus. Wednesday and Thursday, you'll be e-learning, and 60 minutes per class, where students will be working on those e-learning lessons provided by their instructor. On Friday, they will have e-learning day with live sessions built by their classroom instructor, 30 to 60 minutes per class. And the 30-minute class would be, for example, a class that's on a AB in a traditional setting. And they have 8 classes. Those 8 classes would be divided into 30-minute sessions on that Friday, still allowing the time for the teacher to have planning and some professional development, as well as developing lessons for the upcoming week. 60 minutes would be for those block students where they have 4 classes. So that's where you see the 30 to 60 minute, the difference in that Friday. And again, for the high school, cohort B, on Monday and Tuesday would be e-learning. And on Wednesday and Thursday, those students will be face-to-face on campus with everyone e-learning on Friday.
So assuming we were able to eventually move back to a more traditional setting, if we were in a low-risk disease activity model, some of our health and safety precautions, if we did have students in our building 5 days a week, some of the main differences here, we would still require that staff, students, and visitors did wear a face covering. As far as our reduced capacity in classrooms and buses, it would really not be possible in this model because we would have a majority of our students back with us, so it would be much more difficult to social distance in those areas. We would still maintain our cleaning procedures, our hand washing routines, our signage would still be up on all of our doors. We would still have our visitor procedures in place by appointment only, and again, screening them upon entry. We would still encourage virtual events just to avoid large numbers of parents and other community members entering our buildings and possibly putting students and staff at risk. We would still serve breakfast and lunch in the classroom, again, to avoid large groups congregating in cafeterias. And we would still suggest the use of no use of lockers or playground equipment, and we would still have those same protocols in place for 6 students and staff in this model.
Okay, and again, obviously, teachers would report to their buildings Monday through Friday because we would have students Monday through Friday, so 5 days a week, face-to-face. And if you look at the instructional side, those are the same bulleted points that we said for the hybrid model for when the students are there 2 days a week. So again, those things would be able to be possible. Now, moving to one of those questions that has been a burning question, as some of our folks call it, is the child care. And so this is one that we have really wrestled with, stayed up at night thinking about, looked at other districts and what they're doing, if they are doing anything. And so this is what we are looking at and proposing and trying to finalize for extended day and wraparound care for students in grades K through 5. So we're going to start with the face-to-face model. In the face-to-face model, our extended day would operate on their traditional schedule. If the bell schedule were changed, obviously we would start at 1:40, and again, they would be open till 6 o'clock. With this model, social distancing cannot be guaranteed, although we would definitely try to provide all of the health and safety protocols that Amanda Santa Maria went through with our instructional model. So again, we would try definitely to stay if we're face-to-face, if they social distancing and those sort of things. So definitely try, but again, cannot guarantee. On a hybrid schedule, we would provide what we're calling wraparound services for students on that model. This would include 3 full days, because remember on the hybrid, the e-learning days, the students are at home, but we have teachers that would be teaching. So from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. would be the 3 full days, and then 2 days from 1:40 to 6 o'clock. So that's wrapped around for all of the time that they might need childcare. Thinking about our teachers in this one also. We would need to cap the enrollment at each elementary site at 150 students max. Many of our sites right now don't have 150, although we do have a few that have over 150. So we really would be offering more with this model than what we currently are. And again, we need to point out that social distancing cannot be guaranteed. On the e-learning model, and this is one that we're still working on, because again, we're waiting to hear back from the State Department on our plan. Wraparound services may be provided for K through 5 students of full-time employees reporting to the buildings. And this would include 5 full days from 7 to 6 p.m. And again, the social distancing could not be guaranteed. Also, transportation would be the responsibility of the family, and of course, pay would be expected on a weekly basis. And again, those things are still being finalized at this time.
Ms. Estep got to share with you one of the hot questions that I'm sure that you're receiving, childcare, and then following right behind that is the new virtual academy in Dorchester too. So I know that you've received many questions. I know that folks have many questions. So hopefully tonight what we would like to do is provide some detailed information and hopefully answer some of those questions and provide some additional information that we're going to be sharing with our families as well as with our teachers. The activity level of COVID-19 with the virtual model really doesn't matter. It's not taken into account whether it's high, medium, or low, because students and families are elected on day one, electing to go 100% virtual online. And this is Dorchester District 2's new virtual academy. It is a program. It's not a school, and that's going to come and be important later on when we start talking about some of the components of it. And our comprehensive technology plan is going to address student devices and internet access for our students, not only on our e-learning days and maybe in our hybrid model when we have e-learning, but also with our virtual academy model. So again, 100% of the instruction is virtual, regardless of the disease activity level, and instruction will be provided by our teachers, and as Mr. Pye said earlier, in partnership with Edmentum, Apex, and Virtual SC. And I would just like to really hit on that as well, is that these companies have a lot of resources for our teachers, a lot of tools for our teachers that they can take advantage of, so they're not having to recreate everything when something is already created. So think of it like a textbook or just another tool that you have in the classroom, something that you as a classroom teacher can use to help you with the instruction of your students. We're going to, next slide, have a online information night, and that will be Wednesday, July the 22nd. Elementary will be at 6 o'clock. Middle and high will be at 7 o'clock. And we're going to be sending out, Pat Rayner's office will be sending out some information about how and where families can log on and get that informational night information. That will be coming out first thing in the morning. So again, elementary will be at 6, middle and high will be at 7. Some of the information that we're going to cover, a quick overview of what the Virtual Academy is, some frequently asked questions that we've been receiving, as well as some of them that we've come up with. Some teachers have reached out, some parents have reached out. So we have some frequently asked questions that we have answers to that we'll be sharing with our families. Some sample schedules. What does it look like to be an elementary student? What does it look like to be a middle student and a high school student? We'll be going over the student-parent contract that we have in place when parents are electing and families are electing to do 100% online in the Virtual Academy. There's a contract that families and students and parents will sign off on. Basically, they understand what is expected out of the students and as the families. The roles of the students and of the family will also be covered, as well as a link to the application. So if a family, after the informational night or even before the informational night, that link will be going out. And if students or families are interested in signing their students up for the Virtual Academy, then they can fill out the application online, and we will have their information in order to start working with that family. Students in the Virtual Academy, again, this is 100% part of Dorchester District 2. It is a program, it is not a school, so students must be enrolled in their current home school. So if you're a student at Somerville High School, you're going to enroll, you're going to stay enrolled at Somerville High School, but you will receive your instruction online through the Virtual Academy. Students may enroll and choose to enroll those students that have an IEP, a 504, GT, advanced placement, dual credit, etc. The students can still elect, and we will have offerings for students in those areas. We're going to do everything that we can to try to meet the needs of our students, looking at their schedule and trying to place those students in the classes that they would have been in if they typically were sitting, let's just say, at Somerville High School. We would like for that virtual schedule to look very similar to that. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to offer everything, just like we don't in a traditional brick and mortar school. If we have low numbers for a class and a class that meet in a traditional environment, that class may not meet in a virtual environment, or due to the nature of the course itself and the hands-on and different aspects of a course, it may not lend itself to being taught virtually. But we're going to try to meet the needs of our students regardless of what their schedule is. Students must attend synchronous and asynchronous sessions. And what that basically means is that synchronous is that the student and the teacher are online at the same time, and they're interacting face-to-face. They are online at the same time. That's what we mean when you hear synchronous. Asynchronous activities are when students are working basically on their own without the teacher in front of them. So that will happen in our e-learning. That will also happen in our Virtual Academy setting. So many programs, and why we felt like this was an important point to make, is that many programs out there are 100% asynchronous, and that you don't have any interaction or very limited interaction with a face-to-face teacher. And we feel like that our teachers teaching and having that interaction, not only for the academic side of it, but also for the social, emotional aspect of our students, was important as well. Attendance was a question that has come up. Attendance will be taken following the state regulations, and students will follow the Dorchester District 2 instructional calendar. A big one is extracurricular activities. Since it is a program, it is not a school, students will be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities at their regular school, providing that they provide transportation to their activities. Students and families must commit to an experience and a culture of virtual learning. Being an online learner is going to be a lot different than being in your class with your teacher. So being adept to that and being aware of what is the expectation for you as a student, as an online learner, and that will be covered as well in our parent informational nights. All right, so our families, some expectations and questions that we receive from our families. We're asking that families preferably choose to stay in the virtual academy for a year. A lot goes into selecting our faculty and taking teachers, as you'll see when we get to the faculty meeting in a minute. We have to pull teachers out of a schedule in a high school to teach a high school class virtually. It's going to be hard to move teachers and students around once that starts. So we do ask preferably to commit for one year, but we will look at the semester. If a student would like to return to their school or the situation changes, we're going to be open, we're going to be flexible in our approach with our families to make sure that we'll work for a mid-year transition that fits the needs of a student if the appropriate space is available at their school. All right? Parents and guardians must create a work environment at home for their child so that they're successful and able to successfully learn virtually. We thought it was an important point that everyone know that there's no additional cost other than what the regular registration fee and the new technology fee for our students. Other than any other, those two fees that all students will and families will incur at registration, that is the only fee that our virtual students will also pay, is those two fees. So no additional cost to our families for the virtual academy. Students and their families, already mentioned this, they got to commit to the experience and culture of a virtual learning environment. And we ask that it is especially important in this environment to have open communication with our parents and our teachers, and we're asking that, and that's in our parent contract, that they will do everything to maintain open lines of communication with our teachers and our staff so that we can better serve and meet the needs of our students. For our staff, we're going to also hold on Wednesday a question and answer session. It will be on the 22nd. Information will go out to all of our teachers with a link on where they can click to participate in that, and there'll be a chat where they can ask additional questions and get answers. But we'll be hosting that question and answering session. It will be during the day. It looks like it's going to be 2 o'clock right now that we'll be hosting that question and answer session for our staff. Like I mentioned earlier, staff for the virtual program is going to be our teachers, so it is going to require that we transfer some of our teachers from a traditional environment to the online environment, to the virtual environment. Another thing that I know many of you have been asked is about fine arts and electives. Fine arts and electives will be offered based on course requests, and we're going to again try to meet the needs of all of our students and try to provide every opportunity that we can that they would potentially have in their regular homeschool environment. Depending on course requests, we may, like we're doing now, have outside teachers that will be used. And a good example of that, working in our partnerships with Trident Tech for dual enrollment, working with ECPI, working with Virtual SC, et cetera. So we may and we will blend some of those programs into our virtual academy as well. Staff will have the same working hours and daily instructional schedule as faculty and staff in the brick and mortar schools. So the same exact schedule that a teacher that goes to brick and mortar to teach either on the hybrid or the traditional face-to-face schedule, our online teachers will follow that same exact schedule and timeline as those teachers. Staff will report to a designated site Monday through Friday as safety conditions allow.
Well, I think I'm next. I'll get that look over here.
Okay, is that?
No, we're still working on it.
Okay, all
We're
right.
switching back to Mr. Pike.
Back to me. I open it, I have to close it.
I didn't know if there were questions for them
Oh,
yet.
was there any, you
Ms. Crosby, I think, had a question, didn't
have a
you?
question for one of them?
I'm thinking that you might answer some of these, actually. When will the students actually be taught to use the computers, the elementary students?
The leap time that I'm getting ready to discuss with the
Okay.
schedule, that week that Ms. Spearman is paying for, we hope to bring as many kids that were willing to come in, and teachers will use, they'll come in for 2 days, face-to-face, divided, half the class, only to get instruction in computers. And if their teacher can't come in, well, then we would arrange to have other staff members train them. We just feel like we have to give those computers out early, or we're going to miss a lot of instructional days with the hurricane season. We don't want to get caught a day before school starts and not have the equipment that we get credit for all this e-learning that we've invested millions in. So I would say that that's going to be taken care of. And the first week of school, if we don't feel we had enough kids, then because high school is not included in her plan, so then we would do the high school students the first week of school. And I guess we could have a day set aside for those who didn't make it the first week to see if we can't get them in there, to get those computers in their hand. If not, then school starts officially that day. The first day with that class, those computers will have to be taken care of at the school level, so then that teacher can go on with her teaching.
And those computers for the elementary will be set up for them to, like,
It's all
team,
set up.
everything will be set up just so they can't go playing games or...
Everything's on there, and I think we've done a lot of things to monitor and watch what they're doing. I don't know if it's foolproof. I think these kids are so smart that they can manipulate anything, but they're going to have to work at it. Yes, everything that we can possibly load up will be loaded up, and it will take the place during this time period of a textbook and those types of things. Everything will be basically there, as most of our teachers have gotten away from using the textbook totally. They're using all kind of resources. We're just giving them another tool that's going to really help. And the kids, all of them, 4K to 12th grade, every single student in the district will have their computer. Everyone.
And when are you going to do registration?
Registration for the schools. What's the registration date for schools?
We're looking at August the 10th.
All right, that's for the virtual academy.
No,
That's regular registration for our schools.
for elementary and all that?
Yes, August 10th and 11th, in 2 days, or just one? Just one. Okay.
August 10th is what we're looking at for the online portal to open.
Right.
So we haven't set how long that will be.
Okay, so it's gonna be a period of time. It won't be
Right,
one
it'll be
day
a
is
period
what
of
I'll
time,
open.
yes, sir.
No, we can't do one day, nobody will have
Because you
half
don't
of
know how
them.
to make...
No, we
set
got
up
to
for it,
know,
you
so
know how
we
many's
know
coming
how
back.
to do, because see, we got to do teacher allocations. We have to figure out if 4,000 students are not coming to the classroom, and I've allocated just the right number of teachers, then we're going to be heavy over, and I have to, we have to pull them from that number. And of course, we'll be looking at expertise, especially for some of the credited courses in the high school. Those teachers are going to be real sharp in their curriculum. We'll interview them and do that. Maybe at the elementary level in particular, and some middle school. A lot of the courses, hopefully we can work out with teachers who have issues, health conditions, and, maybe someone in their family health condition. If we can work with them, we're going to try to do that too. My concern is that if we check it at the semester, we may be begging students to come back. So we won't be holding them out because teachers will want to come back, a lot of them, when we have a normal schedule, as well as students, and we would like to have them migrate back to us if possible. So we're going for the year-long commitment, but we're going to work with folks who have changing plans in the middle of the year if we can work it out. All right, look at the schedule here. Elementary, 7:15 to 1:45. That's a 6.5-hour day. Same thing with middle, 8:30 to 3 o'clock, 6.5 hours. High school, Rollins and Gap is on that schedule, 9:30 to 4 p.m. Same takeout time as they have now. We want to get them back home. That 30 minutes extra that we added, we had an hour between sessions, now we have an hour and a half, and so that we can clean the buses, wipe the seats down, the handrails and those things, that, and also maybe the slowness of the kids, social distancing to get in the line and get on the bus and get seated. There'll be assigned seats and those kinds of things, and probably wear masks in the seats and the whole 9 yards. And so all that takes time, especially at the very beginning with the younger children. Okay, next slide. Now that's the adjusted calendar start dates. We ran this by our principals after all the committees, we began to lean to this. Of course, we didn't have much choice when the governor came out with that, but it was very interesting. We were already meeting, and it was unanimous by our principals that they preferred the September 8th to make sure our technology was in place. Everybody's hoping another 2 weeks will make a difference in the health situation, so we're all holding out for that. So that's how that came about. And then, of course, like I said, the governor sealed that deal, as well as Ms. Spearman encouraged us to look at the September 8th date. But like I said, that was one of our options before he made that announcement. So it made it a lot easier for us to do. But you see, we have those leap days. That's the 5 days. Will be August 24th through the 28th. Teachers will begin on August the 31st, and then students on September the 8th. And then we don't know the model yet. We're love to say it's face-to-face, but we've got a lot of things that needs to happen before we get to that piece. So tonight I need to have you, action needed, approve the bell schedule and approve adjusted calendar start date. I will need that. But why don't we take a minute to let y'all ask questions about any of this, and then we'll go back to the vote, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, if it's so fresh on everybody's mind.
I do have a question. Can y'all hear me okay? What about special needs children? How are they coming every day? Or are they coming the same schedule?
Good evening, thank you. Our special needs students have been included. Thanks. Thank you. Our special needs students have been included every step of the way with all the models. So whether it's the face-to-face model, all students will be, of course, attending like they usually do. If it's the hybrid model, our students will be attending like all the other students. Equal access to their education is paramount. And of course, okay. So, in the hybrid model, where the students come, general ed students come 2 days, we are going to look at specific individual students' IEPs who are more moderately and severely impaired, who would not benefit from virtual instruction. And so we are going to look at those students and consider with their families options of attending more regularly than the 2 days. Of course, parents will still be given the option of education, the e-learning model also. Some of the students who are severely and have severe handicaps also have medical conditions that may not allow them, or their families may not want them to come into the school building. So we're also going to, address the services there relative to maybe some home services relative to that disease level of activity is a critical benchmark of what we can do, what we can't do. But our students have been on the table with discussion every step of the way, so we're really pleased about that. A lot of the parents ask about related services, speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy. We've just closed a great extended school year program. We provided speech services virtually to our students and academic services. It was relatively successful. We enjoyed it tremendously. So we're going to continue to provide that. Occupational and physical therapy are a little different because they require a lot of hands-on service to the children. So the model that we're discussing is I'll say, quote, clinical model, where students can have an appointment, schedule time, come in, get their OT and PT if they're not in the building because of severe medical needs that won't allow them to come. So we're right there with everybody. I sit at the table with those two and Mr. Pye every day, all day, and we work through all of our needs for special needs students. Any questions?
That was very helpful.
Thank you. I didn't touch anything there.
Mr. Farnsworth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Guthrie, you're good? Yeah. I want to start that way and head down that way. I do have a few questions, but before I start with those, I want to say again, and the same thing I said last week to Mr. Pye and your team, thank you again. I don't know that folks really and truly understand the work that goes into this planning and the days and the sleepless nights. So it's very much appreciated. Tonight, I think, was extremely helpful to get into some of the details and a lot of the questions that I know we've been seeing as board members, I think were answered tonight. So I'll start there. I think like a lot of folks, and just to put it out there, I'm pretty disappointed in the governor right now. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's expressing that sentiment. But from the get-go and his remarks last week with the 5 days face-to-face, it's really loud. Just not understanding some of the conditions that I think the districts are working through. And then to today's press conference and the funding, his discretionary funding that he's decided not to put into public schools. Just kind of a shame, a little bit of a travesty. So I will stop with that bandwagon. But I did have a few questions looking at our plans for reopening. So understanding the DHEC guidelines and moving through those different phases, my assumption that, Mr. Pye, from your perspective, that will be your team, you and your team, that will say, we're now able to move from an e-learning to a hybrid stance once DHEC says, hey, we're at a medium risk level.
Once we see that, naturally, we'll call our principals and staff together. They'll go back with their faculties. We'll quickly make sure everybody understands where we are, and I will call a meeting, if it's not one already scheduled, to update you on the now new change and our new timeline for moving quickly into the next phase.
And so that kind of leads into the next question. What's your thought? So when we move down that schedule or move to the different areas, I guess, what's the time frame? Or do you think on a Friday that DHEC's going to say we're at medium, and then Monday we've gone from e-learning to a hybrid model? What is your?
I think with my staff and the way we planned, I think our schedule's flexible enough to probably pull that off. But I would say for good planning for anybody, you would probably need a transitional week, maybe even 2. We just don't want to miss out on the opportunity of getting these kids back to as normal as possible. But again, we don't want to get into something that we didn't think it through and have to close down 2 days later. How awful would that be? So, I'd want to come to you and tell you we're ready. We're all excited and everything's taken care of, and parents understand, because a lot of them won't be involved in child care situations on outside of the school, and they would need a little bit of time to work through those things, because it will change, their schedules will change, and then I think that they'll, have to work with that. So it's really for the parents.
Yeah, I was going to say planning purposes, absolutely. Do we know, and this is probably to Ms. Santa Maria, do we know the last time that the county was at a medium risk level?
I don't specifically know the last time that we were at a medium risk level. I do know that not the last time that they updated it, but the time before that, we were at a moderate in one of the categories, but they do take an average of the 3, so we did still wind up being high because we were in high in 2 of the other categories. It's 3 different metrics, and then they average them out.
Okay, perfect. And while you're up there, sorry, because this is probably for you as well, is there, looking at the safety and precautions, I noticed for all of them, so even in the low risk, that we're still talking about a lot of the precautions, so like masks and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there a no risk category that we haven't talked about? When do we get back to that?
When coronavirus goes away and it's never a problem anymore. I think that would have to be something that, again, comes from DHEC when they deem there to be a no risk category. Right now, it's just low, medium, and high. They have not determined that there's a no-risk category where health and safety precautions don't need to be taken out in public or at the workplace. So I think for right now, we would have to err on the side of caution and still be operating under the thought that precautions need to be taken.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A few more, and I wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget my train of thought here. On the virtual program, will the lunch program still be available for children that need that?
Yes, sir. According to the law, we have to provide that for the students who that are on free reduced lunch, subsidized lunches. We have to provide that.
Okay.
That's the law, and we've done a great job of that. Thus far, all summer, we've been serving meals. We would continue to do that. I assume many days it'll be hot, but we're going with a food service. I'm not sure what they'll do in these times because they're trying to fix lunches so that people who have transportation problems can come on a Monday and get the whole week's lunches, non-perishable type things. They do a good job of that, and they told us that's how they thought they would begin to handle that so kids could take larger quantities home and they wouldn't have to worry about the transportation, get back and forth, especially if they came on a Thursday, Friday. I think it would behoove us to make sure they have plenty of food to last them to Monday so they can come back and replenish. Yeah, we do, don't we? We do not. Well, we may be starting. But the state keeps looking. I don't think they're satisfied that there's so many students that qualify and they're not eating the lunches that the government has provided the funding for. We can't use it for anything else. So it would behoove us as a community, if we could, to do that. The problem would be your labor cost would be astronomical. But like I said, we're dealing with a company that's extremely efficient, and chances are they may have something, particularly for the ones who might be just outright free lunch. And again, remember, the students, we can offer it, they just won't all come for various reasons, and that's disappointing.
Yep, thank you. On the virtual as well, the bell schedule for the virtual side of it, will they have their own bell schedule? I'm assuming they could. They don't necessarily have to follow the other models, correct?
That's correct. It'll be very similar because of the way it's organized, that we want people to understand it's real school. We can't have anything that looked like we had this spring, do what you can when you feel like it, work at 11 o'clock at night, get up and work at 9. We want a system where we train children to stay in that kind of groove because we anticipate them coming back and they got to acclimate to real school. If you turn them loose too long, and they're going to suffer because some of them have a lot of catching up to do.
Closing out, and I just got a comment, and I did, and Mr. Pine actually, and I had chatted about this last week. For the cohorts, and I think it's a small subset of folks that are in this, but siblings that are in the cohorts, I'm sure you guys have talked about that.
We have.
Good.
Otherwise, we're going to try to match them up schedule-wise. Same thing with the buses, that they can sit on the same seat together, their siblings, which will allow us to not have to worry about the spacing issues we would do if they're not within that family. Sort of like they do boats and other things that they've allowed, as long as families are connected, that they can be together, and we'll do the same kind of thing. But no, we're planning to do that. A lot of parents have already indicated that they would want their high school student to have a different schedule from the elementary. Well, we've had others to say, I want them to have the same one. The different one would allow the high school student perhaps to be available to sit the younger child. Whereas, I don't know what the reasoning was about them not being on the exact same one, but we've had an unusual number of people to comment that, please don't make us do it. It'll be a choice. You tell us what other siblings you have for that child in each of the schools and what schedule you want them on, and we'll try to put them on that schedule. So the whole family is on the same one, especially if the parents are bringing kids back and forth to school.
Yeah. Good. That was my list. Again, I would just close. Thank you guys again. Thank you, Mr. Pye. Thank you to your team. The monumental task that is upon you guys as well as us. At the end of the day, I'll say the same thing as last week. At the end of the day, I think we just have to give people some options. I think we got to give them flexibility and let the parents kind of choose what direction that they want to go in. Overwhelmingly positive. I think from all the comments that I've heard, certainly there are some outliers, but as far as the plan and what you guys have put into it from a lot of different folks, parents, teachers, just across the community, I think a lot of folks are very, very pleased, and I think they're happy. So again, I just say thank you for putting the effort that you guys have put into it. It means a lot to us.
Well, good thing we were doing the technology plan before this occurred, and the staff, we did have the practice in the spring with what doesn't work, so we knew not to start up that again. We've just know a lot more today, and we're learning every day because this is new for every one of us. And I'm on the phone talking to other superintendents and districts. They're at the same loss as we are. all around the country. I had people calling me, I think I might have told you last time, from Indiana that had been in one of our presentations Ms. Eastep and I did, and Dr. Huggins in Atlanta for Read 180. And she called me her guru and all this, and so she was calling, and Hope Mifflin was on the phone with her. They were calling me to find out what this great, wonderful district was going to do about reentering, reopening the schools, and I was a complete loss. I thought they were calling me about the program, like, how are you going to teach Read 180? I said, we hadn't even thought about that. We're trying to just get children back into learning, period. We hadn't got that far yet. So I had to pick their brain of what they were doing, and they were at a complete loss. They didn't have near what we had going on as far as the planning. It's very difficult, and then you don't know what the state will allow you to do or what the governor's office will allow the state to do. And it is Ms. Spearman and the state boards. They're in charge of the education in the state of South Carolina. They should be making the decisions, and I'm glad she stepped to the plate and she's doing that. But all of these people, we're talking about the health agencies, every one of them, they'll read the riot act to you, and they end it with, we trust the school districts to do what they think is in the best interest of children. Well, thank you very much for tying our hands and throwing us off the cliff and said, we know you can swim. I mean, that kind of thing. But we are swimming. I am blessed to be with the team that I have. They just go at it, and I'm never satisfied. I don't want to come across negative. I just get anxious about, I didn't sleep a bit last night. I'm never happy with what we decide. I keep thinking there's some child that needs extra help. There's some teacher that has a problem. And we know good and well we cannot solve that. I know that. I've been at this too long. But I sure want to try.
Do you have something? Ms. Hubbard, do you have something?
I did, thank you. Two questions. The first is, I do want to say, though, all the work you have done is just amazing and incredible, and you guys are thinking of the student first as always, and so thank you for that. The first question I had was regarding childcare. How will parents who need that, how will they know what the options are? And I don't think this is under your control, but is there any kind of, not sliding scale, but because a lot of parents are going to have to pay for daycare who've not had to do that before. So I didn't know when they'll get information just regarding their options, where they can go, whatever.
Well, our program, in order to just be able to pay the workers, we're not making, unlike in the past, we're not shooting for a profit. Mm-hmm. We're only shooting for a break even. It's a service that we're trying to do. And of course, we want to look out for our employees and our staff members, but everybody's going to have to pitch in. It's no longer, we just don't have the monies to do it. The public and the teachers, whomever takes part in this, it's the cheapest by at least a third. All the daycare programs that we know about, say if we charge $160, $150, $160, they charge $200. So they're already higher, and for siblings, they don't give a discount. Some of them do not. So we're trying to keep it lower than any of our things. I just got an email just before starting from my minister at Somerville Baptist. He and the Y have already formed a partnership. They will be offering a program for 100 of our students after school. We're talking to a half dozen other churches. I know people say they don't really care about that, but we got the school program. We're adding more seats. Child care is not our primary business. And we are so focused on getting people back in school. We just want to help our community best we can, and our staff and all to be able to be free of those burdens. But we can't eliminate all of them because it's just what it is. But we're certainly going to try. Last week we had no child care program. Before I taught last Monday, we were bombed with emails and things about what are you doing about that, and we can't depend on churches and the why they're going to charge too much and all that, and you know, you want to have that private conversation with someone, but it's not appropriate. They don't understand what I understand, and I know they don't think I understand what they do, and they're probably right that I don't know the hardships some of the families are experiencing, and they need help. It's just what it is, and a lot of them don't have the family support system that we grew up having. No grandmothers, no aunts, uncles, no close neighbors or friends, and who's going to help them in a time of need? So And that, like I said, is not our primary business, but our children are our primary business.
Well, I think just the fact that you are working with other community groups and to help offer parents a solution is more than anyone can ask. I mean, our business is when they're in our buildings or in front of a computer of ours, but, so I just appreciate you trying to offer parents an option. So the I mean, I guess they just need to be on the lookout from churches, from organizations, advertising, or...
Well, as of today, we've talked to over 24 districts. We're the only district that's going to do childcare of those 24. And they're the top districts. Nobody in our area. They just can't pull it off. And we've got different scenarios. That's it. Under any scenario, we can make it happen. It's just going to be tighter because we're going to need so many people. But if we come back to, if we're able to offer the child care and our teachers are asked to come back to the campus sites, then that's going to really present a problem for them in particular because other kids will be back in their homes. So we know that we're going to have to perhaps try to work out something with them. And they may not like it, but it's better than saying you're coming back working. But think about the homes where there are two parents. Are both parents is child care offered in all the workplace? The answer is no. And it's just a shortage of those child care things. And no matter how people say it's reasonable, it's not. You got 3 or 4 kids, you can't. I don't know why anybody can. The mother can afford to work outside the home when she's got all that child care stuff. So it'd be easier just to be there to take care of business yourself. So it's a real hard situation, and we know that. And we want our children to come to school happy, not worried about their parents, being able to pay the bills and put food on the table. And as we said, if we reduce lunch and all, well, we're looking at the whole child. And these kids are really hurting in the situation. Many of them are being abused. Many of them have been neglected. And when I hear that DSS is going to come in and straighten things out, give me a break. This is my 51st year. I'm still waiting to see them. And I've called hundreds of times. It's not been something I'm used to getting help from. So I'm now depending on our churches, the Y's, any of these organizations that are family-oriented to try to get the message. Let's work together to offer many options to our parents. But we will do an option sheet that we'll get out.
Thank you. The other question I had, and this really is a detailed question, but I know we've gotten emails about it, and maybe it's not something that you can go into now, but I know people have been concerned about when, not if, when we are back in the building at a hybrid level even. I'm sure your group has thought about everything else. Protocols in place for what happens if a teacher, a student, someone is exposed, has the virus. I mean,
well,
I don't know if that's a very...
They have to be removed from the scene, and anybody that's had that has done that, but Amanda, if you can answer that question. She's all over this.
I understand that's a difficult question that has lots of options,
Sure. So each situation is handled on a case-by-case basis in partnership with DHEC. And regardless of whether it's a staff or a student or a visitor, there's different protocols in place, and we handle it again on an individual basis to determine what needs to be done and what steps need to be taken to protect all the other staff and students.
And is that going to be in maybe part of the registration handbook so parents know what protocols are in place under which situation?
Sure. So DHEC has not released their exclusion list for this year. They have released some interim guidance about exclusion criteria for COVID, but it's not finalized for this year yet. So we do have some criteria to go off of for right now, but not the finalized guidance for the upcoming school year. Okay. So we do have some information in our handbook, obviously with printing and things like that. I don't know if it'll make it in the actual handbook, but we definitely will release guidance for parents and for staff before the school year.
Thank you. Thank you. That's right.
To piggyback off what she said, Mr. Pye, to clarify, the kids that say they come to school on Monday, Tuesday, will those kids be allowed to go to go to the daycare program here on Wednesday and Thursday?
Absolutely. And then they'll get to go even on Monday and Tuesday when they leave out of the classroom Whatever
So
school they're
that's
in,
not gonna
they can
solve
go
them.
right, they're in elementary school, they can stay there till their parent can come get them from the high school, the middle, wherever they might be working, just like we've always done. But then the full days that they're out, we have them back for full
But now,
day.
you talking about just employees' children? Or
No,
I'm
no,
talking-
everybody.
All-
Everybody that we can accommodate. I
All
mean,
children?
Yeah,
that-
up to
say if they go
150
on
per
Monday,
site.
Tuesday, they can go to the daycare all day Wednesday and all day Thursday.
Whatever 150 is times 15.
All right, the other thing I had was, I had two different calls on this about the teachers are saying if they get the COVID and they have to be out, is that going to go against, they get 10 days, so I mean, is that going to count against their 10 days when they have to be quarantined for 14?
Amanda again. Where's Amanda? We've gone round and round with that, and there are rules and
And the
policies
kids,
of how to handle that.
So yeah, so
The
again,
personnel's all over it.
we would work with DHEC to determine exactly how many days an employee would need to be out, and then we would work with the personnel department to go from there in terms of leave time.
And how about the kids? Would they, they're allowed 10 days, so would it,
So again, it's all on a case-by-case basis. We work with DHEC to determine exactly how many days a student or a staff member would need to be out, and then we go from there to determine exactly what needs to happen with that student or staff member.
She did fine, she did.
State said.
the one other thing I wanted to ask was, one thing they keep talking about on the news, they say come October, we could get flu season, which is, I don't know what we are now if we're not in flu season, but we might have to do a shutdown again. That possibility is there.
That's why the models that we've got up there will work for a shutdown, and let's all come back. We've got it be the way, because we know that could happen. Everybody's been warning us. And so,
So on the calendar, when you're working on it, are you going to do away with teacher work days and half-day
if
Wednesdays?
we have to,
and all that
there'll
kind
be
of
no
stuff?
half-day Wednesdays, that's over.
Yeah.
And teacher work days, we need so bad to do, but we've done so much for them this summer. We about worked them to death, so, but they do need the work days to do their report cards, so maybe those would be kept, but other staff development days, we may not be using them for that. We might actually use that towards trying to make up our 180 days for children. To keep the calendar from going to June 17th, we might could buy some of those days to help us.
Okay, we're used to the registration fee, but they're not used to the technology fee, so is that going to be
Well,
the same price?
It's going to be a state-of-the-art, what we're giving them could well cost over $500, $600, and it's a $20 fee, because that's insurance and everything, which doesn't cover that cost. But they have, every district we've talked to said if there's not buy-in, they'll be misused, and we're going to lose them, and it's a great cost to our taxpayers to replace that. So we have to have some rules, and so we've got policies that we're putting in. We have an agreement that reads the right act of everything. It will be signed by the student and the parent, and we're going to hold them to it because it's a binding agreement that our attorneys worked on. So we hate we have to charge anything at this time, but it is, every district we talk to is charging it. And nobody's charging 20. It starts at 50 and goes up to 100. So we're charging 20, the minimum, because we just won't buy it.
Mr. Mitchum?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what everybody else has said. Thank you so much to the DD2 team for working these tireless hours to put a plan together, one that I feel very comfortable with, and I feel like the others share the same sentiments. Just a couple little detailed questions. What are we going to do specifically to make sure our classrooms are ready for social distancing? What exactly is the plans to prepare our classrooms?
Man, if you would share what we know about that, we got.
And there's been a lot of talk about air quality and air ventilation systems, so what exactly?
Air quality, we don't know of any issues, but again, there's a lot, but we have 25 schools. I mean, to change out air conditioning units would cost more money.
Right.
We'd have to sell schools. So I don't know what people would be expecting, but if we knew of a place, and so we're not using mobiles like we used to, which would be usually where we had the problem, I think we have a pretty free flow of air. That's why we're not willing right now, this early, to risk our children coming back.
Understand.
Or our teachers being subjected to that, because we don't know. But we got to bring the teachers back at some point so they can help us determine if they feel there's an issue with their class.
Okay, I will start. In terms of social distancing, our principals have already gone to their classrooms. They've done this probably 4 weeks ago and sort of measured out their classroom, figured out how they could fit in 6 feet apart, 36 square feet, marked out how many students could actually be in that room. They've looked for larger spaces. They've looked for smaller spaces if they have smaller class sizes that, can fit into a half-size room. So they've done that. We're limiting transitions. Obviously, if we're on the hybrid schedule, we'll limit transitions so that the fine arts folks would come into the room rather than the students walking all together in a big, crowd going down the hallway. Same way with restrooms. I mean, just those things that sort of make sense if you stop to think about, okay, 6 feet apart, 2 meters, 2 yardsticks apart, teaching the students how to do that, teaching the students, and obviously I'm talking elementary, walking on, third tile from the wall, so, just all of those things that they will train them on. And again, some of those LEAP days will be used to go through and talk about protocols. I know for health and safety, not necessarily the social distancing, Amanda's got some other things that she'll share.
So just to kind of echo what Lori was saying, a lot of those things, again, removing furniture, just making sure that, the students are spaced adequately apart, limiting those transitions to make sure that the students are not all congregating in one area. That's especially important even at the secondary level, making sure that we're not utilizing those large group areas like cafeterias and things like that, kind of making modifications to things that we would normally do like ILT, just kind of changing the way that we normally do things. School's going to look a lot different this year if students come back in a hybrid or a traditional model to make sure that things are safe. We also are just, in addition to social distancing, increasing a lot of our hygiene measures, adding hand sanitizing stations all over the school, putting signage up everywhere to make sure that staff who's entering the building knows the signs and symptoms of COVID, visitors who enter, even students at the secondary level, making sure that they're aware of what to look out for. And the masks are another big one, face coverings, making sure that students know how to properly wear them, know that they should be wearing them, same for staff, same for visitors. And then the screening of visitors is another big one that we are implementing to make sure that we're screening visitors as they come in.
So you're not going to screen each child each day?
I'm sorry?
You're not going to screen each child each day, just the visitors?
We did not feel that that was something that would be possible for students at this time, just because there's so many students that could potentially be coming into buildings, even on a hybrid model. It just wasn't feasible at this time. And it's not the recommendation of DHEC. They don't recommend mass screenings, but there will be a message that is said every morning on the morning message at all school levels, kind of encouraging students to report to their teacher if they're not feeling well, and that they can go down to the nurse if they're not feeling well, to make sure that we're encouraging students who don't feel well to report that to their teacher, so that we're kind of being mindful of students who may not be feeling well, who might be hesitant to report their symptoms. So that is something that DHEC, did encourage us to do, and so we're implementing that at all school levels.
They covered a lot, so I don't really have a whole lot to add, but I would add that we have encouraged our principals to work with our faculties already to come in and get like furniture brought in from the outside and take that out of our classrooms, take personal items as much as you can to declutter classrooms to provide maximized space, and that goes for elementary through 12th grade. That we're encouraging our families to do that as well. And when we get to secondary level, that transition's a little bit more complicated, especially when students have to change classes to see different teachers. It's not as easy as you start to move up for middle and high, but the increased supervision and some of the things like Ms. Santa Maria is saying, limiting those large spaces where students could gather and really having that supervision in place is going to be essential.
Thank you. Do we have any idea what we think the breakdown will be for the virtual by elementary, middle, and high school?
It was,
I knew we
wasn't it
knew
right at
overall.
4,000 total? 3,800 or something. What was the elementary count, Lori?
I believe it was like 4,022 total. 1,600 of those were elementary. I don't know, the rest of them were middle and high.
Okay, that's good. I just,
You might just let the elementary go all the time, because there won't be anybody there.
and
So that's 2 schools worth.
how will we figure out how many virtual teachers we will need?
Well, I've been getting different numbers, but I've hired enough for the average, when you put the 25 and the 20s and the 18s together, when I'm doing allocations, it usually runs around 22 students per teacher. So we've got a full staff of teachers, so we can have 22 to 1 average. If 19's in the first grade, that's what we'll have. So if we pull out enough that we have to pull out 2 or 3 first grade teachers, then the rest will be moved there. It's just that our virtual academy will be coming from all the schools in the district, and it doesn't sometimes work out that maybe Beach Hill has 100 kids coming out,
Right.
where Span may only have 12, and that presents a problem about how you pick teachers.
So
we
if
may
we
have
ha-
to add them to the Beach Hill teaching situation.
If we had a virtual teacher, say, take ill, would we have a substitute virtual teacher? Or?
Yeah, I think we have enough of our own that we could
Just
probably do fine. We're going to have a lot of people at first that we're going to be able to share staff members that we, always have to help us with differentiated instruction and working in small groups with kids that at first in schools they will not be, the teachers will be doing all the online, so they will be free to assist when a teacher's not there.
Also, I'm imagining there's a lot of logistics involved with determining who is a A and who is a B from a standpoint of bus situation, classroom size, family orientation, family members. I mean, that's a huge.
Several principals have told me they've already been playing with it, and they like A to K and L to Z worked out almost the same number.
Gotcha.
And they felt it was, all of them said they can make it fit to get the right number. Our problem, our biggest concern, are can we fit them on the buses?
Yeah.
The social distancing. That should be the issue we deal with.
I'm supposing there'll be X's on the bus seats for don't sit here.
I'm sure it will be, and perhaps if we've got employees like some of our at-wills and all that we're hiring that may not be needed right at first, may have to serve as monitors, as long as we're asking kids to wear masks and sit apart from each other to make, there'll be seating charts to make sure that is being done, so the driver is free to drive. They can't. They won't be able to have the time to police.
That's what I was thinking.
And you're encouraging parents to drive, aren't you?
We absolutely are. And when we asked how many of them needed bus transportation, the number was surprisingly low compared to what we normally have. So we felt real good that parents are very concerned about their children, but they also see the need to help us out with the social distancing.
Take more than
Thanks.
15 minutes to drop them off in the morning time.
Well, we're going to have to do some finagling to get the bus lines through. We're hoping that parents will work together in carpool.
We felt like it was important to add at this time, too, how closely our elementary, middle, and high school principals are working together through this process. We already have a traditional schedule. We already are starting to work on assigning A, B, and have that set, but working hand in hand in that communication with your feeder schools, whether that's elementary or middle. They all were gracious enough from the elementary to the middle to say, high school has a very complex schedule. Tell us your A-B kids, and we will work at the middle school and the elementary to do the best that we can to make that match. So they are working, they are communicating, they're CCing me and Lori on those emails. So just really want to say they are working hard to make sure that we have those sibling groups paired up.
The only thing I'm going to add there too is that Mr. Shope and his team also, they actually came and sat down with Greg and I to try to figure out, okay, how can we do this? Again, that was 3 or 4 weeks ago when that was the hot topic, and we got that one figured out. But yes, the high schools were awesome. Within 2 days, I think all 3 of them had sent their list out. We had one of our middle school principals figured out how to do the VLOOKUP in Excel and make it a lot easier and shared it with everybody. So it truly has been a very collaborative effort. And, you know, it's not just our team, but it's the teams at the schools too.
Lori, one question. When they come in and teach, when they come in on Monday and Tuesday, and that teacher teaches those Monday and Tuesday, does she teach that same lesson to the Wednesday, Thursday group?
Yes,
She'll be
ma'am.
repeating the lesson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Shope has also been working with our 32 special needs buses, and we have that transportation, all the information he needs relative to students, siblings, times, routes, our 2 buses with nurses. We've been working with that very closely. And the socio-emotional committee has been working with marking off classrooms and bus seats, all with positive images. So the bus seats will have smiley faces on them. And it won't be like a crime scene investigation. It will be like, don't go past the flower garden, you know. So very socio-emotional to try to keep everybody smiling. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Every detail. And I will say this, I wish we all had a crystal ball. We would know when and what and where and how, but this group has made it so that the information they gave us was amazing, and it's as close to a crystal ball as we can get right now. Thank you very, very much. We're going to move on to our public comment.
Ms. Robinson, I apologize. Can I ask a very quick follow-up question?
Sure.
Very quick, just your public comment. On the virtual school, we will not allow kids to transfer into virtual school after the application deadline has closed. Is that correct?
That was a big sticking point today. We talked a lot about that. Tell them what we finally decided.
What we are doing so that we can have a good count for our teachers and being able to allocate the virtual academy, we are strongly encouraging to apply before the end of the deadline so that we can guarantee that we'll have those classes and we're able to build a schedule for a student. But if someone applies after, we're going to still work with those families. We're going to still work with the student to get them in.
As people move in, you and all, if there's room available, we're going to work with them best we can.
Okay. All right. This set of public comments has to do with the agenda, and right now we have one. Mr. Austin Allen, would you come up, please? Yes, please.
She cleaned it up. Oh, my goodness.
I appreciate it. My name is Austin Allen. My concern is I hear y'all done a great job. I appreciate everything y'all are doing. I'm a 38-year-old single father of a 5-year-old. He's getting ready to turn 6 September 4th, and so he'll be going into kindergarten. And I hear all this stuff and these plans, they sound great on paper and all, but in the real life of when, like, if I go to work, I'm gonna be placing the burden of raising or educating my child on a child care facility. So you can say you have all this scheduled time of when this is going to take place, but the reality is that burden is going to be placed on that private care facility that's going to actually have to make sure the child's sitting in front of this thing during this period of time that he's attending. And so the reality is these children that aren't going to be in school, they're going to be in a child care facility somewhere. So you're not taking down the amount of kids being in one room, you're just putting them in another room. So you're taking the burden and the legal responsibility off the schools and placing it on the private organizations and all who, during this when the vouchers was given out, child care facility employees weren't even given vouchers for their children. And so the other thing that concerns me is I see that y'all are saying that the teachers can possibly receive child care for their children, where they can receive an education in a state-funded building that my taxpayer dollars paid for, and so they will have a hierarchy over me, over the education of my child, in which, because I made $27,000 last year, I pay $800 a month for daycare. They do a great job, but I can't teach him to read. I can't expect that the daycare is going to teach him to read, and I can guarantee you, him sitting in front of a tablet is not going to teach him to read. And so you have a generation of lost children. I went to Stall High School when it was Stall High School, and if I would have had to do it virtually, I'd have never graduated. Nobody cared about me there. And I struggled my whole life for that. I moved to this district because it ranked 7th or 9th in the state for schools. I paid $1,400 a month to rent an apartment so that my son could go to a school. And now they're talking about virtual. That's a joke. During that period of time, he's just going to be in a daycare, or he's going to be packed in somebody's house where they're doing co-op homeschooling. And so it just becomes, I don't understand how y'all think that you're saving children. I don't see any data where 5 to 11-year-olds are putting adults at risk for catching this virus. It's the opposite way. It's the adults that are putting the children at risk, not the other way around. But yet we talk about the fear and all. And the reality is if you want to talk about when the virus is going to be gone, it may never be gone. And so in a service business, once you can provide a service, the same amount of money, but less service, it's very hard to get back to getting the same service for the same amount of money. Getting them back to that where we're getting a full education for our children, because I can't educate my child like that. I can make sure he's doing his homework, but y'all painting a broad brush with all these children, elementary, middle, and high school, It's just something to think about. You're just going to pack them into another school, and that's it. So you're not saving anyone. If anything, you're putting the child care facility people at risk, and not the people who said they gave their life, that their life is about educating children. That's all I say. It's just something that is on my mind, and I think everyone walks around here scared. I don't talk in front of people, but my son, I do everything for, everything. And so the fact that everyone wants to talk about all these great ideas, and it's virtual until virus is gone, until safe. Come on. That's ridiculous and all. You got to live with it. When the flu virus comes and all of a sudden we're going to be scared of that. It's like we're scared every day, The children are the future and all. So 1 year, that's a lot.
Mr. Allen,
appreciate it.
unfortunately, your 3
I
minutes
appreciate
are up.
it. Y'all have a-
We
y'all-
appreciate
God
your
bless y'all.
comments. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, and now we have public comments, and we do have one from Mr. Ken Greenstreet.
Take this off? Yeah.
You're 6 feet away.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Ken Greenstreet. I want to first extend my thanks for all the hard work. It's an unenviable task that you have planned for the school year, so I thank everybody for that. I know you're focused on COVID-19, but I came here tonight to voice my concern about the teaching of history in school and the impact on the future of America. Proverbs 22:6 states, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it." Ronald Reagan stated, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." I'd like to quote some stated communist goals for America from 1961. As I read them, I would ask that you would think about how successful they have been in accomplishing their goals. Quote, "Get control of the schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum. Eliminate prayer or any phrase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state," which of course is not found in the Constitution. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Discredit the American Founding Fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. Transfer powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. That's a recent one. Discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic and political social problems. Close quote. That's from 1961. That's just a list of 48. Why did the Founding Fathers pledge to each other their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor? We need to ensure graduating students understand the history and virtues of the Constitution and the murderous dangers of socialism and communism. I challenge each of you to randomly ask high school seniors which 5 freedoms are in the First Amendment. I think you will be surprised by their lack of knowledge. Our current history curriculum has been softened, and the fruits of that communist goal and others are currently being witnessed on the streets of America. If we do not change the course America is on, we will see an end to individual freedom. If America falls, the light of freedom in the world will be quickly extinguished. Let us all be better American patriots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Greenstreet. Appreciate that. Before we move to make a motion to vote, the board members have some thoughts they wanted to share, and I've put those together. So, we thank everyone for your gracious and sometimes not so gracious, but always thought out emails. We have received over 100 emails just this past week. We have tried to answer them in the order they have come in. If we have missed responding personally, I assure you, we have read them. We have discussed them with each other and shared many of them with Mr. Pye. We absolutely know how personal and passionate this health issue has become. There are mornings we wake up and feel the nightmare refuses to go away. I know you're aware of the many hours, the long meetings and interactions our superintendent has actively been involved in with all his district and local school leaders, the DD2 task force, DHEC, CDC, other South Carolina district superintendents, as well as our own facility safety director, head nurse, and in-house attorney. Our board is impressed with Mr. Pye's conscientiousness and thorough manner in approaching this unprecedented situation. We absolutely support him, but also know that the decision made will not make everyone happy. We must move forward, and while doing so, we will continually work to provide the safest and most secure health and safety for our children, our teachers, and staff as they begin a much-needed school year. Please keep us in your thoughts and prayers over the next few weeks as details will be continually worked on. We just felt like we needed to let your staff and you know how we feel.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And at this time, if there are no other questions, I'm going to need a motion to approve option 3 of the proposed 2020-2021 school calendar start date as presented this evening.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. I'm actually going to make a different motion. I think we need to split them out. Just to show our support of Mr. Pye's reopening plan, I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt the reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
Okay, well, do you mind if we do it the way that we planned first? Okay.
You got a motion on the floor.
Okay. You second it? Okay. Is this okay with the rest of the board? This is not what the legal team asked me to do, so. Would you repeat that so that we
Christie
can?
got something to say.
I'm not going to.
Okay, will you repeat that motion then?
I will. I make a motion that we accept the proposed reopening plan presented by Mr. Pye for the 2020-21 school year as a board.
Now, Christy, will that include the calendar?
I think it would be appropriate to also vote separately on the calendar.
My intention
Okay.
is to vote on the calendar as well as start times separately. I would just like to show our support, assuming the board supports the reopening plan, I would like to show our support for this reopening plan as presented.
Dan, you just said that.
That's exactly what I said. Got a motion and a second.
Okay. Okay. Any more discussion with that? So let me just be clear. You want to do the second one before the first one. That is what your intent is.
I apologize for any confusion. I just want the reopening plan that we've been presented, the different options, the hybrid, the e-learning, that part of it, I would like for us to adopt as a board. So that's my
Okay.
motion. And then separately, I think we will then vote on the bell schedule as well as the calendar start date.
Okay. Okay. We had it the other way around, but I guess it doesn't matter as long as we do both of it. So all those in favor, any more discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it's unanimous. And now, as I said, the first one we'll do second. We need a motion to approve option 3 of the proposed 2020-21 school calendar as a start and as has been presented. Will you do the motion?
I make a motion to approve the adjusted calendar start date for the 2021 school year.
Thank you. Now I will need a second. I'll second the motion. Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. And I think that now, if you have anything you would like to say to us, Mr. Pye? The bell schedule. Oh, thank you. Okay, we need to make a motion for the bell schedule. Thank you.
I make that motion. Go ahead.
I made a motion to approve the bell schedule as presented.
Okay, and Ms. Crosby, you second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it is also unanimous. Okay, anything else? Mr. Pye?
Yes, I want to thank the board for your support of this and your listening and all the wonderful questions that you ask. You can never think of everything, or we may have said it, but it doesn't sometimes resonate quite the way we hoped it would sometime, but it's there. But these plans are very flexible and can be changed, and I promise you, if we feel in any way, shape, or form it's not working, we will make some changes and we'll run it by you. In the meantime, as we continue to gather input, knowing everybody, you can't please everybody, you can't do all this stuff, we hear the different things that people say, and if there's any way we can help soften that, we will try to do that. It's just that this is a public school system, which we have thousands, 27,000 children, or 26,000, and we're in a community with over 100,000, 120,000, and so you know the different things. I probably received 200 emails. None of them were mean-spirited. I have, in my career, had some real mean-spirited, threatful things. People really are supportive of the effort it took, the time, and the listening, but they still lobbied for what they thought was important from their perspective, and I appreciated all that. And that changed. We had some other things that was going to be different today. We heard things even last Monday that you brought up. We changed it. We just didn't tell you the specific, but it was pretty well there. And we went back, and as late as this afternoon at 5 o'clock, we made a major change in here. And of course, we'll see how that works. And it just is the right thing to do. We're trying to soften something. This pandemic has affected the entire world. It has caught us by surprise. I've been at this 50-plus years. I've never seen anything like it. I don't understand it. As much as I think I've had experience, I've had no experience in this. This has been something. I'll never forget this. But at the same time, we all grow when we learn from that. It brings people together. We begin to appreciate people's differences and how they come to the table with different ideas that help us, make us better, make us see all aspects of it as we make a decision. So if anybody's out there that we didn't do that, I apologize. That maybe it doesn't show that on the surface, but we don't give up. Come see me. We'll continue to work for ways to try to make it work for everybody as much as we can. And I want to thank my team, how wonderful they are working with us. I want to thank our teachers who were very supportive when we came up tonight. They had the signs in the parking lot and scared the stew out of me. I didn't know what I was facing, but they were all positive signs, and these were all the faces of the teachers who sent very humbling emails to me and this past week. My preachers never email me, y'all. I got an email from him saying he's been praying for me all day. I wondered, my goodness, is it going to be that bad? I mean, people are scaring me with all this praying for me, and God's probably saying it's too late to pray for that man. He's too far gone. We can't do anything to help him. But I do appreciate all that and working in a district like this where we truly are a team. we're a team that come together and do the right things for our children and the people who take care of them. Thank you.
We're talking about the buses and that all the children could go to, come to daycare. Wouldn't that put an overload on the buses in the morning time? If they come to school the opposite days, the parents would have to,
We that out and get the children here. And again, there's ways we help with parents with that too.
All right. At this time, I need a motion to adjourn. Evan?
Oh, no, we got executive session.
Oh, to adjourn to go in executive session. That's right. Y'all could leave, but we're here to stay. Thank you very much. I need that motion.
I'll second the motion to go into executive session.
Thank you. For personnel issues.
I would give
We need a vote. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you.
you have a clean copy of this.
Thank you. We need a motion to go back into regular session.
I make the motion, we go back into regular session.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. I need a second. Ms. Crosby, any discussion?
Am I in there?
All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous. Now I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I make the
First-
motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the new hire for Oak Brook Middle School.
Ms. Hughes made the motion, and Mr. Farnsworth seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Mr. Guthrie, did you raise your hand? Okay. It is unanimous. Now I need a motion to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
And a second. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you all.